So here we go. Okay, so just a second. Okay, last time we talked about why we're here. What are some of the things that bring us here? And we had a few images here that said, we have certain goals to meet, or our lunch periods look the way they look in that photo, or we feel overwhelmed and exhausted. Some of us are here because we want to get that elusive work-life balance to work well for us. Or we may be here because, by the end, you're not giving yourself your own oxygen mask, you're putting it in other people first. But unlike what they tell us in the airplanes, we're not putting it on ourselves first, right? That self-care piece of it as well. And I think you are at this place, in this space, because you've been very successful in many things that you've done throughout your life. And in your current roles, you're also successful, and you wish to continue that as well. But the work, as we talked about last time, for those of us who are here, is very complex, challenging, ambiguous at times. And so we need more strategies at our disposal. And so today, I would like to tap into one particular resource in particular that was just highlighted last time, and introduce this framework that comes from Jake Knapp and John Zeratsky. They're both former Google sort of employees that, through many years working in that industry, made observations as to, what their work lives look like, what their personal lives look like. We may have read and heard and seen what, the work environment as such a place might be, at a place like Google or Apple, or what, some of those tech startups that are now mainstream. And there's a lot of flexibility. Yet one of the things that is there too is that there's a lot of long hours too, right? And so just like the role of the principal, many of the people that work there are left to, they haven't used their vacation days, even though they have a package of unlimited vacation, right? And so claim that they make is that we have to be intentional with what we do with our time if we want to make sure that how we spend it and how we focus our use of time is productive. And so today, I introduce their framework here, and there are 4 components to it. And it starts with highlight, then laser, then energize, and the final part is going to be reflect. And throughout today, we're going to unpack in this next, 50 minutes or so, each of those, mainly the first 3. You're going to have time to ask questions, but also share with each other in small breakout groups. What are the things that actually work for you as you try to prioritize the highlight portion, as you try to focus, that's the laser portion, as you focus on the priorities and try to allocate time to make sure you do a good job on those things that matter. And then you're going to share with each other what are some of the strategies that have worked for you, and maybe some challenges that you want people to help you with around how to energize too, because all of this good work cannot happen if we're not strong. So with that said, let's jump right in. Feel free at any point to ask a question on the chat. Amir will help us as well. If I can ask you once again, Amir, to just surface any question that is relevant and timely as well. And so let me just continue here. So the first one, highlight. I believe that we have a notes catcher. You can use it as well. It has some hyperlinks to the slides as well, and some other information, but in particular the slide that I'm sharing from. Thank you, Amir, for sharing the notes catcher. And the first part, again, this is pretty simple. You may opt to also write it down, is the highlight portion of the framework, which is how do we prioritize? And one of the things that the authors talk about, and what I do as well, is like, as I look at my Google Calendar, it's like, what are the key big rocks that I want to make sure I get done, that are going to make me feel satisfied, content. I'm going to feel like I accomplished something. It also is going to move the needle at work as well, or in my personal life, so that then, I feel successful, right? And so it sounds simple, but one of the things is that we always get caught up in being super, super busy. And the authors will claim that a lot of us, whether in education or outside, we live in some sort of default setting, we're just on the automatic conveyor belt. Things are happening around us. We don't seem to have a lot of agency. And so being able to say, hey, what's going to be the highlight of my day? What are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that I want to make sure that they happen? And where are my energies going to go to ensure that those things happen? And one of the things that they caution is to avoid a busy bandwagon. And so what is the busy bandwagon? It's the culture of constant busyness. And you may relate to that. I see, let me see some hands here. Raise your hand, virtual hand, if you feel that, you are constantly busy, whether professionally or at home. Any hands there? I don't see, oh yeah, there, Miss Garcia, I see you. Okay, thank you. If you don't feel that you're that busy and it's not like ongoing, this is great. It's good evidence for you that you're probably in a better place than some of us as well. But this culture is that like your inboxes for emails are stuffed and your calendars are full. There's the to-do list keeps growing and you can't catch up. And it's the mindset that like in order to feel successful, everything needs to be full. In order to feel productive, I need to jam pack everything, right, in my schedule. And so we want to not have it look like this and see what is the alternative. And in order to avoid just being busy and being in a default setting, there are 3 things that help us determine, 3 strategies. And I'm going to ask you in a moment to talk about it. Which one resonates most with you? Which one are you using? Which one do you see yourself using or trying out as well? So let's take a look at what those 3 are. So the first one is urgency, right? When you try to pick on a Monday as you are heading into work, or last night as you look into the week and the next day, it's like, what is something that is urgent, that really needs to get done, that is pressing, that people are depending on you to get done so that the ball can continue to be moving, right? So what's urgent there? But another way to select your highlight for the day is not just through the urgent part of it. The urgent part of it acknowledges that things do need to get done, but there are other ones, such as the ones that bring the most satisfaction to you, that brings you a certain level of accomplishment. It's like, I did it type of feeling. And then there's a third section, one that brings you joy, that is genuinely, it makes you happy to be able to do those things. And all of us may differ as to what are the things in our day, but what is not a negotiable part is that it is important to have these type of highlights, because being able to get these things identified and then accomplished will make us feel like successful, and will also, stringing them along, will prove that we're being effective in the work that we're doing as well. Again, whether professionally or personally. So I'm gonna give you a couple of examples of the urgency one. So just one around urgency. This is my schedule, for example, for today. And I know it looks pretty full, but it's not a perfect thing, right? There are some white spaces there, and there's an actual term called white space that is important. I get it that today there isn't such a thing, but the week is pretty, with tomorrow not being a work day, I'm not really touching anything work related. I feel that I can push hard today, rest tomorrow, and then try to even it out the rest of the week. But one of my highlights today was to have a meeting with our principals here, and especially since one was out for a week, being able to set them up and set ourselves up for success so that then the work can happen. Another one was a meeting with our front office team as well, because again, they serve in so many capacity, so we need to make sure that they are supported and properly. If the two people, the people groups that belong to these 2 meetings are able to be supported well by me, then many things at the school can also function in a positive way, in an effective way. I needed to have a REACH pre-conference. That was important, even though I had informal observations before it. If I didn't get to those, no big deal, but this one, I needed to make sure that it happened. I needed to make sure that I was present for this master class for us to be together. So that was a priority. And if I can hold this, I know that at the end, when I reflect on my day and I can make these 4 things happen, I'm going to check off the list and say, this was a really good day. And I'm going to feel accomplished and a sense of joy too. Tomorrow, even though it's not a work day, I do have some time allocated that before, I'm going to go golfing with some of my friends. So before I do that, I want to get a sense of accomplishment done, something related to work. So I'm going to do it at that time in the morning. Then if we get to Wednesday there, as you see there, I just color coded it normally in orange, but anything reach related, those are important for me, get that done. And then I have one particular informal visit that I want to make sure I do with the science team in particular, because they're all new. So for Wednesday, I want to make sure that that gets done. When we get to Thursday, again, you get the idea. There are certain things and on each day that like I'm selecting that are going to be important for me. If I can meet the target on those, then I feel a good sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. All right. And so that's addressing the more pressing, what is needed, because most of these things from our design and point of view, if I don't make sure that those happen, then the subsequent things, the chain of events, might not happen as fluidly and as effectively as we wanted it to be. So they are a priority for me. But there are also things that bring joy and satisfaction. And I think last time I just showed you, and you may have it on the slides, something like a habit tracker. And so on the left, I had written different things that my habit tracker is going to measure, like sleeping by 10 o'clock or running 2 miles 3 times a week, or spending quality time with my daughter. I just have one child, she's 15. And so it's important that I spend that time, or read a book, it's a goal of mine. So then I make sure I do that, or a gratitude card to staff members 4 times a week, because if I don't do those things, I start complaining more about them and not do the good things or not see the good things that they're doing every single day. And I fall into a cycle of just negativity myself and seeing the glass half full instead of, half empty and seeing half full at times. Or, I don't know about you, but home improvement work, I'm not that handy, but when I can get at least one thing done, I feel super happy. Like, when I changed the garage door opener, by watching some YouTube video, and I did that, I mean, that ranks up in the top 10 of personal sense of accomplishment in my life. I'm pretty sure it is up there. So these are things that bring, again, like I said, a sense of satisfaction or joy. And this is from my personal side of life, right? And so I showed you a habit tracker where, like, over time I started tracking it. Some weeks are better, some months are better than others, or some weeks are better than others as well. But then you don't have to have this many. I'm a little bit nutty, but it's not perfect, right? Like, and we're not going for perfect here either. It's just that if these things are important, I want to show and track and monitor whether I'm investing the time on those things. And so as I close and as I lead us to any time of, talking with each other, this was one thing, right? Like on my habit tracker I want to make sure I write to my daughter before I go to work, a daily message. So there, I leave it there, she picks it up. I started this back in 2011. Okay, what was she at that time? She's like 4. And then, I continued it. This is one from 2018, like almost writing it every day, because I leave, by the time I leave, she's, she wakes up, I'm not there. The hours of a principal, I live far from the school that I work at as well. And so then I write notes over time, and it becomes an interactive journal between us. So this is important to me, and it's not something that at first it was a good habit, like that I did it. So I needed to help myself. And so when I go on trips, for example, I write it behind a Post-it, and then she opens it once a day, and then she writes a response or something like that. So what are the things that are highlights for you that are important, that needs to get done? And if you need help, you're gonna ask yourself, what is that? And then think about what is urgent, what is pressing, what brings you the most satisfaction, what brings you joy, as well, and then make that happen that particular day, one day at a time. Okay, any questions before we break out into groups and share, what is the highlight 1, 2, or 3 that works for you in terms of a strategy that works for highlighting or prioritizing for you, or even sharing what's important to you. But any thoughts or questions before we break out into groups of 3 and 4? Okay. Since there are none, we are going to break for about 6 minutes. We'll put a clock on that. Introduce yourself to another school leader that is working really hard and giving their all at their particular schools. And then try to answer the question here, one of the two, it doesn't matter, which are the 3 strategies, whether it is like focusing on things that are pressing, that are urgent, or focusing on things that bring great satisfaction, of a sense of accomplishment, or something that just gives you pure joy, happiness, right? How do you select your highlight each day, and how has that been? Or how do you think, if you were to adopt one of these, how do you think your day will change? Okay, make time for it so that it is uninterrupted. And so this second portion is called laser, that allows us to do the type of work that it becomes uninterrupted. And so today, one of my colleagues here at our school at Gonzalez was sharing that last week while she was at a conference, we have a policy that if it is learning time, whether during school or out of school, we don't check emails, we stay fully engaged, just like our norm. We afford ourselves the luxury of doing just one thing. And when at the end of the day of the conference, the phone turned on, it was just like, her expression was, my phone blew up, right? And it kind of gave her insight as to how many chat messages take place in a period of a day. And so part of the theory of application here is that we're not able to focus if we have a lot of distractions. And the phone is one of the main culprits of that in our modern age. And so the next few slides before you get to, again, talk with a partner and a group, is really thinking about how do we get to laser focus on these things that matter, and recognize that there are certain quicksands or infinity pools that draw us away from really getting the work done. Last time in session 1, I mentioned one very helpful book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. That talks about that all the people, like, from J.K. Rowling's to Bill Gates, or, different, famous people that he notes on it, and not so famous people like us, perhaps, that really get good work done, need uninterrupted time, especially when you problem solve something. You want to create a new frame or system or structures for you. You want to plan for a professional learning day or half day or an hour, things that have your name on it, right? You want to create a new schedule for your diverse learner educators that works for everybody. Well, you can't do the good work and effective work if you're constantly in a busy schedule or you're constantly being interrupted. And so here we're going to have a little bit of some self-reflection before we get to talk as to how much of this is impacting us. And so what are infinity pools? They can be things such as the things that, even though they're intended to help us in some ways, they can also draw us in and suck us in, whether it's Facebook or email or Instagram, shows on, Disney Plus, Netflix, YouTube, even just surfing the web, again, everything in moderation is pretty good. It's just that these pools are called pools because we can always go back in it, and we keep going back in. And sometimes we don't realize how long we're spending time in there. We may talk about our students, our teens, or our high schoolers that we get to teach and lead and serve. But as adults, we may be in a similar situation at times. So a few things that allow us to be able to focus better is to really take charge of our phones, for example. So how do we make this a distraction-free phone? Some of the things could be like logging out. If you have your email connected, Some people might not have their email connected. That's even with everything there, all these strategies, there are ranges from very extreme to least extreme. But if they're becoming a distraction, just logging completely out, because the process of having to log back in and log back out, well, logging out is easy, logging back in is cumbersome. Kind of is sort of like a practice that will make it harder for you to then grab your phone and touch it. There are studies that say that it's a very high number of times that we touch our devices in a single day or a single hour without us realizing it. And that's part of the distraction that gets in the way of doing good work. I know friends of mine as well that have a lot of notifications, and at the very top is almost every icon of every app that they have is showing there. Well, the more of those things you have, the more that piques your interest, right? And it gets you from not focusing, for example. My home screen, for example, has very little things. Just have some of the basics, for example, and then my second page is about that, and that's it. I don't have anything else on my phone. If it is a game or something, like I hide it even in folders, to make it even harder to reach, if that's the case. And so I think clearing your phone, home screen, for example, to make it harder for you to access things is the idea behind that strategy. You can also, some of us may be older, we remember a time that we didn't have phones, flip phones, or anything portable, and we managed just fine to survive, and the work still got done. I tell my daughter when I had to call collect, and the newest technology as a young adult was the beeper, and it was just one of those things. Some people are like, what is a beeper? A pager, right? I even had a little bit of a criminal, sort of semi-criminal background, where some telephone, if you had a device where it made the sound of the quarters going down, you could then call with that. I don't know if you guys know that one. But I was mischievous as a kid growing up. So anyway, we survived and we're fine. And I think we'll be fine again, even now. I know that as leaders, we're always worrying about what if my chief or somebody calls. It's kind of like, if they're meant to get you and catch you at some point, you'll be reached, but you can't always live so hyper connected, because that actually may be on a regular basis a stumbling block for your effectiveness. Another part is staying out of the infinity pools, is to make sure that we're not so much on TV or watching the news, or acknowledging our kryptonite, if it is Facebook, Twitter, any of those things. Making sure that we do what it takes. We do this with children sometimes, where they disconnect the Wi-Fi, for example. So you may need to do some of those things yourself if you're not getting to do the work. I can remember many a times trying to do work on a Saturday or Sunday while watching sports and doing that. And what all that does is just prolong the amount of time it's going to take me to get something done that I want to do well. It just goes longer, much longer. And oftentimes when I do that in the evening, I start adding snacks and different things that make me eat more or caffeinate more, which are not good for me to begin with at that time of the day. And so it's like a double whammy situation. So again, and then TV, make it a sometime treat if that is something that sucks you in. For example, we didn't have a TV for a long time, but we got a TV donated and it's in the basement. All right. So it's like, if I want to watch TV, I have to go all the way to the basement. If it is more of a temptation, then unplug everything that makes the TV work and have it there. And then when you need to watch it, plug it back in, whether it's the antenna or the Roku or whatever it is. Make it harder for you to do those things that could be a distractor. Okay. So with that, I'm going to ask you to go into your breakouts for another 6 minutes, and then share what is something that resonated with you from the laser focus section, and really avoiding infinity pools and distractions that get in the way. Because the idea is this: If you can get uninterrupted time to work and focus with high levels of engagement and energy without interruptions, you'll be able to problem solve a lot of the challenges that come your way. You'll be able to design and create new structures and systems and routines, or you can execute ideas better because they're not getting interrupted, they're not getting shortchanged or short-circuited. And so how do you plan, or how are you already doing that, and how can you share that with those in your breakout group? So
to answer somebody's question, because they were talking about still feeling like they're not getting things done, and they're at the end of the day. And I was going to say that I took your suggestion. I tried your method, Kim, and I've been getting to work at 7. Game changer. Game changer.
Okay.
Everybody, my custodian is like, "What are you doing here so early?" Game changer.
Instead of staying up late, right, Romeldia? Like Salter, like instead of just, we were just talking in a group, and we're going to talk about the next section, which is energize. But even looking at, let's say, an email, checking email before going to bed, right? Let's say you even want to reply to a parent, a staff, the PPC, whatever. Let's say the email is not one thing that brings you joy, for example. Even your best reply at that time is going to be with a depleted body and mind, because you lived a full day. And so the percentage of being not your best email, being one in which I'm already cranky, already like sensitive about the content of that, and then I might say something that I might regret later, is higher than picking that up in the morning and just writing something with a fresh mind, new day. That's one thing that is going to be helpful to keep in mind as well. So some benefits of just like not touching that work at the very end of the day, picking it up fresh in the morning, uninterrupted, like Principal Salter there. Thank you so much. So let's go to the next part, which is the energized portion. Maybe one of my favorite ones, because this is where the fuel to be able to prioritize and get the work done and focus is going to come from. But it can be a little bit challenging. I know that it was challenging for me, and it still is from time to time. But here I'm going to share quite rapidly through some images, some strategies that I think that will be important. So one is that to energize, we have to have movement. We don't have to go crazy and become the world's gym, gold's gym, member of the year. But try to be able to get movement, blood circulation going. And so some what we call zone 2 activity, which is moderate movement. Research, science also shows that it's good to be able to do those what's called the HIIT workouts too, a couple of times a week to get the heart rate up as well. The New York Times has the 7-minute workouts. Here you can see Fitness Blender. You don't have a gym, don't worry. Like this is all like a library of Congress full of exercises that can support you. You don't need Peloton per se. It's right there for you at different levels. And then one of my favorites is one of their hacks, which is number 63, inconvenience yourself. On Saturdays, for example, let's say I don't go exercise, but raking leaves, going up and down the stairs and picking up the laundry, going all the way down. Maybe just like forgetting something, not to bring it all out in one shot, but going several times gets me to keep walking and hit that, magic number of 10,000. And there was a new study that 10,000 was thrown out there, but, sort of like as a kind of Malcolm Gladwell number that was supported, but even recent research, even around movement and steps, put it as a nice threshold for us to get to every single day. Also, like energize is by how we eat, for example. And so educating ourselves around like, what are some good foods to eat? Just in general, Michael Pollan will suggest eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. Doesn't mean that become a vegetarian. Proteins and fats are really important. But it's just in this modern diet, like where there's a lot of processed food, you may feel very sluggish, depending on what type of foods you get to eat. And that doesn't allow us to really be fresh, to be able to focus and ideate and create at our highest level. Central parking your plate means that you put, the salad in the middle and the proteins around, so that what mostly occupies your plate is more on the natural green side of things. Then some people have also tried and found success with intermittent fasting. And so, that may mean that you eat dinner and then you eat maybe skip the breakfast, but you eat the lunch. What I do see a lot of principals do, they don't eat anything, breakfast or lunch, and then they try to just like catch up at the end of the day. That's really not the best strategy to care for our bodies as well. Some of us, or many of us, depending on the number, may caffeinate ourselves. And so one of the strategies is that don't just go for the coffee right away as soon as you wake up, because most bodies have this natural wake up cortisol shot that from the night of sleep that is there, that does not necessitate the coffee, but the coffee does come into play at a certain time of the day. As you can see here, like it's sort of like a window of like 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock. That's a critical time, oh no, not that one, the first one around sorry. Yeah. When it's dipping down, maybe you want to give it, and it's just a cup or a nap. But then after a certain hour, you don't want to caffeinate because it's going to impact your sleep. So that's the part that on the slide, it shows the danger zone. And so if you're a coffee drinker, you want to have a good night's sleep. And caffeine does impact you. I know it doesn't impact everybody with sleep. Most people I know it does. So cutting it by 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock will also help you rejuvenate through your sleep. Speaking of rejuvenation, being outdoors and wood bathing or nature bathing is helpful as well, different forms of exercise. So I know that our science team, for example, during the lunchtime, a couple of times a week, they go out and they walk, for example. I see a couple of our clerks and 2 of our principals who do that as well. And so that is something that we can also control and try to get to do. And then, how do we get to spend time with people that energize us? I know some of us, half of us may be introverts, and people may draw energy away from us. They suck our energies, but there are a few, maybe even if it's one-on-one, that you do feel energized by, even if you're an introvert. And so how to get quality time with them provides energy. So that may mean that you're working on something for an hour straight, and then you spend some time with loved ones and whatnot, and then you come back. And that type of intermittent work on something helpful like that, like something, challenging or important that you're working on that requires deep work, such a distraction is an okay one, because it's a win-win in terms of you get to spend time on things that matter. And then you come back with a break, fresh to work on your work area with a new outlook as well. All right, so, and the last one here is just like, it's about really putting your own oxygen mask on first before trying to take care of others. So instead of going into a whole group, into our breakout groups for this last portion, I wanted to get some thoughts or questions in regards to, energizing and what resonated with you and what's something that has worked for you as a school leader to pump in more energy into your day as well. Anybody would like to share? You can write it or you can unmute yourself and share it.
So I'll share, I do optimize caffeine and I'm careful about the times. So I'm like anywhere from 9 to 11 that I will have a nice strong cup of coffee, and that sets me up for the day. But I have a lot of water before and after the coffee to flush. And then make it personal. We have a standing dinner date, my family and I, my 3 children and my husband. And no technology, all food, all fun, for sure. At least 4 or 5 times a week.
That's awesome. With your water, if you have a regular one, I think that you drink multiple ones. The smaller it is, you have to refill it more and get out of your office if you have it that's an example of inconvenience yourself to do something that is good for you. Instead of carrying the big jug, because that big jug, you have it, you sit at your desk and you just keep on drinking. You don't get any blood flow and moving on your legs and body going to your brain. Somebody's showing me, the smaller it is will inconvenience you to get up and go refill it. And in that, you might run into somebody that, the visibility for school leaders is important instead of just staying in our office. So another hack there. Another person would like to share? We might have something on the chat here that Amir applauded. I go visit my pre-K, my happy place. That is great. Yes, kind of. Thank you. Here.
I would say for me, maybe about 40 minutes, 45 minutes before I go to bed at night, I just make sure I'm not looking at my phone, not watching TV or anything like that. Just try to have somewhat quiet time, so I'll know that nothing's on my mind when I'm going to sleep. And when I do that, I can tell I wake up very refreshed.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. So researchers call sleeping and get a good night's sleep the Swiss Army knife of self-care. So outside of drinking and eating, the most important thing we can do, and you can read a lot about it. Amir will share in our notes catcher, we have a link to 6 different articles that you can read more about what was presented today and much more that was not presented. But the most important thing is to be able to sleep well, to energize and clear out our brains, our minds, make it healthy, and then our bodies as well. It's just that when we don't give ourselves that chance of a good night's sleep, the work that we produce is not going to be as good. And I think I may have shared this the first session, but if you try to do some work, let's say from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m., it might take me 2 hours at that time while listening to music, having the TV on, eating some snacks to stay awake because I'm already tired. Or I can just go to sleep by 9:30 and wake up earlier, refresh from the sleep, and then spend half that time and get the same or better results without investing so much time there as well. So thank you, Anthony, for sharing that as well. Sleep is critical, and I hope that you can get anywhere between 7 to 8 hours every single day as well. Well, as we close here, I see that Amir has shared the survey as well. The last portion was just to reflect. On the slides that you have access to, you have this template where you can just look at what were their highlights for the day, give yourself a rating on whether you made the highlight or not, yes, no. And then on laser and energize, what was your level of focus from 1 to 10? Or what was your level of energy from 1 to 10 as well, right? And the reflection portion is taking that time to look back and see what you tried, how did it go? Some of you said, hey, I'm gonna turn off some of my notification apps, for example, so that I can just have less distraction and be here. I'm gonna lock the door, I didn't lock it. Lock the door for an hour or so when I really need to get some work done, right? I'm gonna step away and go to a room or another school to plan for the upcoming, ILT retreat that is really critical for the work that is happening. What are the different extents? And, in the book, they'll talk about deep work, Bill Gates going to a cabin for a week, for example, or J.K. Rowling's, checking in because they have money, to a hotel, for a week in Edinburgh to write the final book of Harry Potter. Well, they're doing those things because they recognize the importance of doing good work in a way that is uninterrupted for longer and longer chunks of time, rather than having scattered like one thing after another all day long. And so reflect on how your day goes. And I already heard it today. Some of us are making those adjustments. And I hope that by the third session, when we come together, some of these outcomes will happen. You'll increase more time on things that matter around instruction, if it's school or family at home. You'll decrease more, less stuff on managerial things. You'll, decrease the time on just looking busy and being on a default setting or in infinity pools. And then you'll have an increase of new ideas or creative solutions that come with a fresh mind and body that goes along with that. So again, I thank you for investing in you, because investing in you is going to make your communities even better through you. And then just a reminder that we're just trying to support each other. These master classes, it's just a name, but we're here to learn with each other, support each other as you did in the breakout rooms. And I do encourage you, I'm changing for this next cycle from an 11 o'clock office hours to an after school one at 3, from 3 to 4. Amir will send that information as well. So please join and share more. I think some of these 1-hour sessions, sometimes they're pretty cramped, but the office hours are pretty informal as well. And I think we can get a lot out of it. So the next time we meet, I think I put it here, will be in January 25th, okay, from 11 to 12. And I hope to see you and others who were not able to make it today. We missed you, and we hope to see you then.